It is I, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, here to talk to you about the readings for this past Sunday, the 6th Sunday after Pentecost. Today, I'm going to be reading the actual lessons today, or most of them. The first one is from the prophet Zechariah, chapter 9, verses 9 through 10. Rejoice greatly, O daughter Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Lo, your king comes to you, triumphant and victorious is he, humble and riding on an ass, on a colt, the foal of an ass. I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim, and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall command peace to the nations. His dominion shall be from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. The second reading is Psalm 145, verses 1 through 8. I will exalt you, O God my King, and bless your name forever and ever. Every day will I bless you, and praise your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised. There is no end to his greatness. One generation shall praise your works to another, and shall declare your power. I will ponder the glorious splendor of your majesty, and all your marvelous works. They shall speak of the might of your wondrous acts, and I will tell of your greatness. They shall publish the remembrance of your great goodness. They shall sing of your righteous deeds. The Lord is gracious and full of compassion, slow to anger, and of great kindness. And then I'm going to skip the third reading, which is Romans 8, 9 through 13, and instead go to the Gospel, Matthew chapter 11, verses 25 through 30. Jesus declared, I thank thee, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that thou hast hidden these things from the wise and understanding, and revealed them to babes. Yea, Father, for such was thy gracious will. All things have been delivered to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart. And you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I probably should have stood for that and had candles. You should, as Josh and Father Sean and Bishop John and Father Steve were saying, you should read these. Josh said that you should read them all. Father Sean, Josh said you should read them multiple times. And Father Sean said that you should write them down. And I'm going to raise the bar even higher and say that you should write them in runes and illuminate them. Where are you going to go from there? Who's going to top that? I did not write these in runes and illuminate them this week, but you know what? I really should start doing that. Actually, that's not a terrible idea. Anyway, actually, this is so not important, but I saw this book, this giant leather-bound book, bigger than a computer, at some hippie store the other day. It was beautiful, and like handmade pages on the inside. And I was like, I would love to get that, but I don't know what I would do with it. And it would be super fun to in my horrible I'm a terrible artist, but to find some cool runic looking or Greek looking font and to copy down the readings in something in one of those fonts, something that people can read but that looks cool, and then to do do some illuminations on the side too. I'm gonna have to think about that. Okay, well, back to the lessons. So the common theme that I saw, which I'm relatively certain that someone else at least mentioned, is humility. Now, the other week on July the 3rd, when I was discussing the difference between the images of Jesus and some of our saints and heroes versus some of the statues and the images that we have of our American founding fathers and heroes, a friend of mine saw that, and they said, I asked them what they thought, and they said it was good. It was like in the whole video you were saying, yo, humility. And yes, that is exactly what I was trying to say without realizing it, though, because this was the thing was, even though I was saying yo humility, I wasn't thinking about that. What I was doing was looking at pictures and images of Jesus and of our heroes from the Bible. And that was the thing that came out in every single image and every single picture, humility. That is, I mean, it's obviously in the Bible. We know that it's one of the virtues that we extol, and yet it seems like it stops with Christianity. Like we don't actually look for humility in our leaders, in our history. By the way, it's not just America. Like when you look at the founding documents of other countries and cultures, it's the same thing. You know, Achilles was not humble. The Tyne Bow, I mean, that's a cattle raid, which was begun because Maeve, was that her name? She wanted to steal a cow because she and her husband were having a an argument over which of their herds was the greatest. So, by the way, look at what happens when pride gets in the way. You get the Trojan War and the Tyne Bow and Cuchulainn. Anyway, so in the lesson in Zechariah, lo, your king comes to you, triumphant and victorious, but also humble and riding on an ass, on a colt the foal of an ass. I'm not entirely sure, but the image that I showed on July the 3rd, which I'm showing you again right now, where Jesus was sitting on a donkey but had his feet on another smaller donkey, kind of like a footstool, and I was wondering why they did that. I think maybe that's a reference to this verse, where it kind of sounds like they're talking about two different animals, and so they were trying to put the two different animals into the image. I'm not sure, but that would be kind of cool. So our king is humble and riding on an ass, not on a war horse. And in fact, he is he's cutting off the battle bow, and he's commanding peace, and he's cutting off the chariot and the war horse. Not only is he riding on an ass, he's cutting off the war horse. Our hero, okay, I've already talked about that. Then in the psalm, cutting down to the end, the Lord is gracious and full of compassion, slow to anger, and of great kindness. Doesn't say humility specifically, but it seems like humility is something that would lead to all those other things: graciousness, compassion, slow to anger, and of great kindness. All qualities that are often associated with humility. And then in Matthew, first of all, the Father reveals he doesn't reveal things to the wise and understanding, to the proud, but instead to babes, to the childlike. They apprehend things more before the wise do. And then at the end, when Jesus is telling us to take our yoke upon him, why can we trust him that his when he tells us to take on his yoke? Because he is gentle, he is lowly in heart, and we'll find rest because his yoke is easy and his burden is light. Jesus speaks to us. No, not just speaks to us. He doesn't just say, I am humble. I'm the most humble person in the world. I always thought that was funny. But Jesus doesn't just show us that tell us that he is humble. He shows us his humility by taking on the form of a servant, by putting aside his power and his rights and his glory, by being a slave, by washing of feet, by touching of lepers. He shows his humility. And by the way, that is the thing that we see in most of our greatest saints. Like, okay, so here, this shirt that I'm wearing today is St. Christopher, and you see him carrying Jesus as a babe on his back. Now, there's two stories of Christopher. One is the more likely one, the Eastern one, where he is a military saint, and he's told that he needs to convert, and he won't. I'm sorry, that he needs to deny Jesus, and he won't do it. And they send prostitutes to him, and he converts the prostitutes, and all of this stuff. But in the Western story, he's a giant, the strongest man on earth, but he wants to serve the most powerful being. This, by the way, this Western story probably not true, probably just a kind of a fabrication based on his name, but still illustrates the point that I'm trying to make. So he goes to serve the greatest king. One day, somebody mentions the devil, and the king looks afraid. So Christopher, who at the time his name was just Offerus, goes to find the devil, and he starts to serve the devil, and he's walking with the devil and his entourage one day, and they pass by a cross on the side of the road, and the devil cowers at the side of the cross and disappears. So he goes to find someone associated with the cross, and let me see if I can find where that happens. Here he is, and there's this hermit that he sees. And the hermit was by a river, and so he gives Offerus the job of ferrying people, carrying them across the river, which he does. And the hermit tells him, the monk tells him, this is how you will serve the man associated with the cross. I'll just finish the story because I love it. So then this child comes, asks him, Offerus is carrying him across the river, and he gets heavier and heavier to the point where he almost can't make it. And then when he gets to the other side, he says, child, you seem like you're small, but as I was carrying you, I felt like I was carrying the world. And the child says, well, that's because I am Christ, I'm Jesus, and when you were carrying me, you were carrying the sins of the whole world, because I carried the sins of the whole world. And from then on, his name was Christophorus, Christopher, meaning bearer of Christ. It's a good name. So, humility. He was the strongest on earth, but he went to look to serve someone stronger than he was. That idea that you see in Francis, that you see in the story about Francis, where he had been giving away his father's goods to help the poor, and then his father brings him before the bishop, and Francis to accuse him, and Francis strips himself of all of his clothes and stands naked before everyone and says, I now have nothing more of yours. That's that humility, the humility of Jesus on the cross. And we can trust Jesus that what it is that he asks us to do, is a task, is a burden that is being given to us by someone who A, has borne our burdens, and B, who loves us and is humble. And that humility, in that humility, he identifies with us. Humility coming from humus, the Latin word for dirt, for earth. You're down on the ground. So the last image that I would like to show you is called the Alexamenos Graffito. It is almost certainly the oldest image that we have, depiction that we have of Jesus. At the very latest, it's from the early 3rd century, and possibly is all the way back to the 1st century. So what you see is a man, Alexamenos, and he's standing in front of a cross, and graffiti says, Alexamenos worships his God. Thank you, Hercules. And then on the cross there, what you see is Jesus, except he has the head of a donkey. Now, obviously, this was meant to be demeaning to Christ, demeaning to Jesus, and demeaning to Alexamenos, whoever he was. But I find it, especially based on the reading from today, I find it strangely appropriate, to the point where if I didn't know that this would be 100% misinterpreted. This might be it's definitely one of my favorite images of Jesus. And it might be one that I would like openly display, um, because what whoever the person who made it meant to be a a slam, meant to be making fun. Sorry, there's a bug right in my face. Meant to be making fun, uh, is something that I believe Jesus probably laughed at when he saw it. And because at what point in the Bible did God not use donkeys? He used a donkey to talk to Balaam. A donkey brought Jesus to Bethlehem. A donkey brought Jesus to Egypt when they were fleeing Herod, who in his pride tried to kill him. A donkey brought Jesus into Jerusalem. Donkey features in prophecy here in Zechariah, and a donkey features again in the story about in the Gospels. It seems like God has a special fondness for them, and I believe that image, in a weird way, in a weirdly perfect way, reflects the humility of Christ. That's why it's one of my favorites. So, humility. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I give you my heart, my soul, and my strength. Make me a good man.